Within the next few months, Nvidia may be releasing the RTX 3090 Super. But wait, there's more exciting GPUs coming that you may actually want to buy and may help some of the shortage issues as well. Let's talk about what these are. Hey guys, Thiago here with Classical Technology. Remember to subscribe and smash that like button. Alright, so basically we're going to talk about 3 possible upcoming GPUs. Now this is all pretty much speculation. There's nothing confirmed, but it comes from a leaker on Twitter that's been pretty accurate in the past, so usually maybe something will come of it. But anyway, it's fun to theorize what may actually happen in the GPU market if these GPUs come out. Now, the first one we're going to talk about is the RTX 3090 Super, which we've touched on in the past, and the next two are going to be a lot more interesting because they're going to hit right on that sort of entry level and on that mid-range. So let's first just talk about the RTX 3090 Super. Now, it's a little bit unnecessary. People don't really need another GPU with this much power considering all of the shortages that we're having, but after all, we all love technology, so it's nice to see advancements in whatever area that it is, even if it is a little bit superfluous, and we'd like to see that attention sort of pointed elsewhere, like maybe jacking up the manufacturing in order to satiate the insane demand for the GPUs that are actually already out now. Now, having said that, the RTX 3090 Super does seem to be a pretty amazing GPU building on the RTX 3090. Now, the 3090 Super is still going to be packing the same 24 gigabytes of VRAM, the fast GDDR6X, but it's going to be a little faster than the regular 3090, which for gaming, perhaps it won't be as big of an upgrade. I don't think you're going to see many performance increases with this GPU. It's probably going to be similar to what you see between the 3080 Ti and the existing 3090, but that faster VRAM could definitely help in certain areas like content creation, perhaps like artificial intelligence, and different areas where the 3090 is also used pretty much as a hybrid GPU. And of course, it may also help, unfortunately, in crypto mining, because the faster memory, the bandwidth being faster, is going to help it have more of a hash rate than probably the 3090 does now, unless they do some type of LHR or light hash rate like they've done with all the other GPUs. Just remember, the 3090 so far has not been affected by that. Nvidia decided to sort of keep it separate, but faster bandwidth in the memory is something that certainly would affect that. If you take a look at something like a 6900 XT, which really doesn't have the fastest bandwidth in terms of its VRAM, it's around half of what a Radeon 7 would be. Or if you guys have seen the Mac Pro GPUs, something like the Vega 2 Duo, it's about 1 terabyte a second in terms of bandwidth compared to about 512 in something like a 6000 series GPU. So definitely the 3090 Super having that faster VRAM will certainly help with crypto mining, unless there's some type of a nerf, some type of an LHR like we saw with the other GPUs. Otherwise, I mean, with pricing, it would be nice to see this 3090 Super be $1499, at least the base MSRP, because we all know that MSRP prices are a bit of a joke. They really change considerably after the GPU comes out, but you can still catch some MSRP GPUs if you're lucky, like with the Best Buy drop. The Nvidia still sells their Founder Edition GPUs for that amount, so it's definitely not something to be ignored completely. Traditionally in the past, Nvidia have kept the Super GPUs priced pretty close to their previous counterparts, so we'll see if this generation will be the same or if the Super will have a super upgrade in price. I think that could happen. Look at all the manufacturing issues and the insane demand. I mean, you can even look at scalper prices and what people are willing to pay for something like a 3080 at basically almost $2,000 a lot of the time, or at least the very high thousands. So Nvidia may be looking at that and thinking, hey, maybe this time they will update the price on the Super more than they have in the past. Now, so the 3090 is interesting, but the next two GPUs we're going to talk about, I think, may be a little bit more interesting for the market, even more than the 3090. First is going to be the 3070 Ti, but with 16 gigabytes of VRAM. This move actually completely makes sense because Nvidia really has to compete with AMD. Look at their 6000 series lineup. They all have 16 gigabytes of VRAM. If it's helping or not in the games people are playing, the optics of it all just makes it seem inferior if you have a GPU with only 8 gigabytes of VRAM. I mean, mean, this would certainly put the 3080 in a bit of a tough spot with only 10 gigabytes of VRAM. So 16 would definitely look great on the Ti. And you may be asking, all right, so the 3070 Ti has 16 gigabytes of VRAM, 3080 and the 3080 Ti now only 12 gigabytes of VRAM. I mean, look at the 3060. That has 12 gigabytes of VRAM, and the more powerful 3060 Ti has 8 gigabytes of VRAM. There, the power is not really in the VRAM, it's more in the actual GPU, depending on what you're using it for. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a better GPU, but in general, more VRAM should be good. It'll be interesting to see if it is 16 gigabytes of VRAM, if it is going to be the GDDR6X VRAM as opposed to the non-X variant found in something like the 3070. If it is the X variant, and then it's going to be considerably better than the 3080 and the 3080 Ti. 3080 Ti is only 12 gigabytes of this VRAM, so a 3070 Ti having 16 gigabytes, definitely going to be a little weird to see that sort of lopsided, performance with a card that's supposed to be cheaper having more VRAM. Now, if it's the regular speed VRAM, then it makes a little bit more sense. Like, nobody cares that the 3060 has 12 gigabytes of VRAM and the 3080 has 10 of the faster one, because after all, it is faster and it still is the much higher end GPU. It doesn't seem to affect people's real world performance, even though in some use cases you can make an argument that 10 gigabytes of VRAM is starting to approach what may be an uncomfortable limit if you're a real high-end enthusiast. So we'll see what the 3070 Ti will bring. If it performs basically like a 3080 in terms of the traditional rasterization in frames per second, ray tracing and things like that, and it has 16 gigabytes of VRAM, and it can be available in greater quantities, maybe due to it being LHR as well, not as much crypto demand towards this GPU. I could actually see it be a very important GPU and sort of not only take the place of a 3080, and it could really point to what Nvidia plans to do in the future with these higher VRAM allocations on these GPUs, especially considering that they know they have to compete with AMD. Now, the last GPU that we're going to talk about is a little bit interesting. It's probably not ideal, but Nvidia may be bringing back the RTX 2060 with 12 gigabytes of VRAM. Certainly very interesting. Compare that to the 3060 with the current 12 gigabytes of VRAM, supposed to MSRP at $329, but as we know, all of these GPUs are getting gobbled up left and right. So I guess for reasons related to the shortages, Nvidia feels like they have to bring back the 2060 with 12 gigabytes of VRAM. Maybe they can use a different manufacturing node or a different process that allows them to make more of these compared to the 3060 and the RTX 3000 GPUs. That, I'm not too sure if it's going to be effective, but definitely, I'd rather see a 2060 than those other GPUs Nvidia was bringing back before, like a 1030 or like ridiculously underpowered GPUs that nobody really has any business putting in a gaming computer. At least the 2060, you can make the argument that it's still a pretty decent performing GPU, especially for the entry level if it can be priced well and the scalper market doesn't take it out of control, and if maybe it is LHR or something like that, so miners don't get their hands on it as much in order to mess up sort of that flow to the gamers. So if Nvidia could actually produce a lot of these GPUs, at least in terms of like the short term, to make up some gaps, I'm sure people that can't get a 3060, if they see a 2060 in stock and it's cheaper and it pretty much fulfills their gaming needs, probably going to be a pretty good 1080p card, as the 2060 is, maybe even 1440p if you don't want to go crazy with the settings. I could see people actually being satisfied with this GPU until sort of the GPU drought improves in the future. So if Nvidia wants to put it out, probably means that they have a little bit easier way to manufacture it. Definitely an interesting proposition, and it's really not a terrible GPU. It's going to depend on that price though. Obviously, with a 3060 being $329, it can't really be too close to that. Like if they price it at $299, then that's really a bad deal in terms of the original MSRP. I mean, $30 difference between last generation and this generation, that's too small of a difference. I would really have to see it somewhere in the mid to lower $200 range. And we're talking about MSRP here. We know that the scalper market will take this and jack it up considerably, but if it has a lower MSRP, perhaps even the scalper price will be lower on average as well. Look at something that's like the 3090. It just starts off much higher on the scalper market compared to a lower price GPU such as this would be. So we're going to keep an eye on these three GPUs. 3090 Super, interesting, but not really all that groundbreaking. It's going to have a very niche market, even more than probably the regular 3090 does. because 3070 Ti could definitely find a much bigger base depending on how many they can produce. Could definitely be a fantastic gaming card, pretty future-proof with 16 gigabytes of VRAM. And then lastly, for the entry market, you can definitely see the 2060 making a splash if they can produce enough of them and keep the price low. So you can see all three segments of the gaming community could be satisfied with these, the very high end, sort of the mid-range to high end, as well as the more entry-level GPUs. Even though it's funny we call 2060 entry level, it used to be mid-range like last generation, but here we are with the GPU shortages. A lot of our perspectives have certainly changed. All right, guys, so remember to subscribe for more content like this. Remember to smash that like button, and I'll see you guys on the next video.